YouTube found community Count 5 fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. We're here today to talk about the only album by the Count 5, Psychotic Reaction, released on Double Shot Records in 1966. For a group of guys that were either graduating high school or were just starting college, this is a seriously impressive piece of work. Not only are their vocal chops there, and the way they can construct a song is there, but the adventure and the playfulness on this thing, for people who are like 18, 19 years old, it's really, truly impressive. A band that's pretty much known for one song, the title track, Psychotic Reaction, to have that kind of influence on garage rock, psychedelic rock, acid rock, the power that this song has is remarkable. Just to think, it must have been mind-blowing to be 18, 19 years old and have a song nationally hit the top 5, number 5 Billboard Hot 100 track. I mean, like, come on. The Count 5 started life as a surf rock band, as many were, called the Citations, and this group eventually shifted some members, got influenced by the British invasion and a lot of garage rock bands at that time as well, settled on their final list of who was in the band, and named themselves the Count 5. You have John Sean Byrne on lead vocals and guitar, rhythm guitar. Ken Elner did lead vocals as well with John, but also played harmonica and tambourine, and his dad was their manager. That's pretty cool. John Mikowski on lead guitar, Ron Chaney on bass, and Craig Atkinson on drums. They'd even wear Dracula capes when they played shows. I mean, so cool. To get to the release of this album, we have to start with Psychotic Reaction. This song was an original jam that they just had for months. They would just play this thing over and over again, maybe throw some words at it once in a while, but they weren't really sure where to go with it. Then one day, Sean, was sitting in class with a friend of his named Ron Lamb, and Ron leaned over when they were learning about all kinds of psychological stuff in class, and he was like, what if there was a song called Psychotic Reaction? Like, how cool would that be? And Sean was like, that's the missing piece. Let's do this. He went home, finished up the lyrics, showed it to the guys, and that was that. A few weeks later, they were playing a show, and a DJ called Brian Lord happened to be there, and he heard the guys, and he heard Psychotic Reaction, and knew that there was something there. So he offered a couple of tips and tricks to change up the song a little bit, add this, get rid of that, kind of spiff it up, get it ready for radio. Shop them around to a bunch of labels who all said no, until he found his friends in Double Shot. Hal Wynn and Joe Hooven had just started Double Shot Records, which is a record company that lasted from 1966 to about 1972, and also featured like Bobby Freeman, Brenton Wood, and they did everything they could with their small budget to promote these guys, and it worked. Shot up the national charts, hit number 5. Absolutely amazing success for these guys. At one point, they were hearing it multiple times on different radio stations at the same time. Because of the success of the single, Double Shot was like, all right, guys, it's album time. Let's get in there and do an album. So they wrote a bunch of originals, picked out some of their favorite covers, and here we are. Double Decker Bus is such a groovy, fun, bouncy R&B garage rock jammer that is a perfect introduction to this album, because not only do you get the pop construction of a mid-period 60s song, but you get the adventure, just like on Psychotic Reaction. If there's one thing these guys are really good at, it's like playing with the conventional norms of how a song should go. Okay, let's do it, and then jam. The way they seamlessly transition between those jams back to the conventional song construction, if you want to call it that, is truly impressive. For a bunch of guys who are 18 years old, you're kids at that point. It's unreal the level of sophistication they were able to accomplish. I love the cheerful harmonica on this thing, but I mean, overall, it's a super spirited performance. Pretty Big Mouth follows that one up next, and I love the lead guitars on this one a lot. The super fuzzy rhythm guitars, and that storytelling about finding that special someone. A chill, sly vibe kind of feel on this one. It's a little bit of a moodier track, if you want to call it that, but I really dig the vibe on this one. The World. This one is such a groovy bouncer, and I love the vocal inflections on this one. The way they just let loose with some of these squeaks and screams and exclamations. The guitar solo on this thing is kind of cartoony, but I think that plays well because the vocals are a little cartoony. And I say that with the utmost love in my heart. It's a really cool song and something that will live in your head after you finish this album. That's one of the ones that will jump back into your head. Then you get a cover of My Generation, of course, the Who classic, and they absolutely nail the spirit, the energy, the delivery. Like, obviously they're not trying to play exactly like the Who, because then they would just, go put on the Who's album. But hear them do it in the Count 5 style works really well for them. They nail it. They get the idea down. It feels youthful and spirited and of its time. She's Fine is a really interesting song. I like the wistful guitar picking on this one. The vocal melody has some great notes that I feel like aren't particularly heard in pop songs back then. The vocal line, I feel like it goes places you don't normally expect a pop song to go, which is kind of why I like it. But it does have a slightly sadder tone, even though I don't think it's a sad song. But the steady beat keeps it rolling. But there's something about the feeling on this song that feels melancholic. Side one ends with the absolute gem that is Psychotic Reaction. A big hit. I mean, that guitar riff, it's insane. The train engine sound of the harmonica, everything building up before the drums fall in. And then you get into this like charged up, psyched out blues. I mean, like lyrically, it is like a blues song. It's about, not getting the love he thought he was going to get. And it feels like a psychotic reaction, and it feels like this. And then instead of just explaining how it feels, they let the music do the talking. They just jam and riff and use feedback, and the harmonica goes crazy. The drums go nuts. They're just randomly picking at the strings on their guitar. It's just this massive cacophony that builds up and builds up until it explodes back into that main riff of the song again. It's an absolutely brilliant display of adventure in pop writing. Like I said before, for a group of high schoolers, like how the hell do you learn how to write a song like that when you're that young? Truly a remarkable piece of songcraft. So if you hear anything from this album, at least hear the title track. It'll blow your mind. Side 2 opens up with another single, Peace of Mind. And this one, I love the bass leads on this one and the alarm-like sounds that the guitar makes. Another song that dives into the jamming world as well. And you kind of wonder where it's going, but lyrically, it's a song about just loving the person you're with and to stop overthinking about it. They're Gonna Get You was the B-side of Psychotic Reaction, and funny enough, this was actually chosen to be the A-side first, and thank God it became the B-side. If anything, it should have never been a B-side. It's a good song, but single-wise, I mean, Can't Get Your Lovin' should have been the B-side, or at least another single. I think a really good B-side would have been The World or Double Decker Bus. They're Gonna Get You is a really bizarre choice to put on a single. I mean, obviously, the whole point of singles back in the 60s was so a DJ would pick up the single, put on one side, be like, well, this song kind of sucks. Put on the A side, be like, oh yeah, this is better. I mean, that's what they did. The vocals on this song are a little cartoony. The music kind of feels all over the shop, but like it's not bad. For me, it's the weakest song on the album. The Morning After is a really, really interesting song. I love the dizzying sort of effect the guitars have on this one, the thumping bass and the calm reflective vocals. The song is overall just kind of chill and hangs there, and it feels like a nice break from the adventurous tracks. But that break doesn't last too long because Can't Get Your Lovin' absolutely 1,000,000% should have been a single, should have been the follow-up to Psychotic Reaction. It's just loud, dancey rock and roll. I mean, everything about this song screams what was big at the time for like the Standells. That garage rock scene that was exploding in 65, 66, early 67, this song would have had no problem on the charts. And then we end with Out in the Street, another cover from the My Generation album from The Who. And again, done really well. They're not trying to be The Who, they're being the Count 5. And I really dig what they do with this song. I wouldn't say it's as explosive as The Who's because, no one's Keith Moon besides Keith Moon. So you do what you can with what you got, and they really nail it. This particular copy was put out through Craft Recordings in 2018. And I also love how they write old school tip-on jacket, because it's a super heavy cardboard like back in the day. But here's the back cover. Some great shots of the guys. The song's up there. Band info, which I love when records used to do that kind of stuff. And here's the record itself, where they recreated the look of the Double Shot logo. Of the Double Shot label, I should say. There you go. Side 1. Side 2. Psychotic Reaction is absolutely the result of extremely talented guys who got together with a purpose, with a mission, and they knew that they gelled well together, and they made a really fascinating sound and provided new discoveries where pop music could go. They understood the constraints of a pop song. There's going to be an intro, a chorus, a bridge, etc., and the song. But they also knew that you can play with that. It didn't have to just be one thing, and not a lot of bands were doing that at that time. It would become much more the norm years later with people like Jimi Hendrix or even The Who later on. They would definitely expand their sound and their songs and jam a lot more. Cream will be the same way. But these guys were so ahead of the curve and so ahead of the times. It's almost like they knew what was going to happen, so they just jumped in first. Their vocals are impassioned and stoked. You can hear it in their voices how happy they were to be in the studio and have all these songs that they wrote. And the musicianship is truly the mark of people who've been playing for years. I'm not sure when these guys individually picked up their instruments to start playing or singing, but there's history here. And obviously, if they had been a band before this with other guys and jamming together, you learn how to play by playing with other people and by jamming on the guitar by yourself or the drums or whatever. You picked up those skills over time, but for being so young, I can see if they were like 25, 26 when they made this album, that would make sense. But they're so young, and they absolutely nail things that people would expect of people much older of them. They got to be an American Bandstand. They got to go on tour. They were a band up until the late 60s. This was their only record, but they put out a few more singles throughout the rest of the decade. They did a great cover of Curtis Mayfield's You Must Believe Me, which needs to be heard. That should have been a massive hit. Should have been a hit for the Zombies as well if they'd ever done that in the studio. They did it for the BBC thing, but regardless. Count 5, Psychotic Reaction. This is a band hungry to prove themselves, so stoked with the music they were creating, and knowing that they were good, knowing they can go on these adventures inside the pop song, something completely unlike anything else on the radio at that point. And I think they knew that. And I think they knew that was their skill. That was what set them apart from other people. Absolutely an album you need to check out if you love garage rock, if you love what became psychedelic rock, you know, like the early days of psychedelic rock, and psychedelic rock in general. I think you would dig this, but it's just fun. 5 groovy guys who knew what they wanted to do and absolutely nailed it. 9 out of 10, Psychotic Reaction, Count 5. One of the best albums of the 60s. If you haven't heard it, check it out. My name is Giggens. This has been an honor to chat about Psychotic Reaction by Count 5. If anybody in Count 5 watches this video and digs it, that's awesome. Thank you so much for the incredible music, and I would love to chat with you guys someday. Let's do a Zoom interview or something. Let's get a band reunion going. Yeah, wonderful stuff. My name is Giggens. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.